difficulties. So some internet outages, something's going on in our area. But nonetheless, when you have problems with Fantasy Grounds, whether it be with a module or perhaps performance, whatever it is, make sure that you report it on the forums and that you put it in the right place. So if you're going to have any issues that you want to report, do so on the Fantasy Grounds website in the official forum, so that way that these issues can be looked at and that so individuals can report whatever it is that's bothering them. So you want to go to the House of Healing. So this would be something that is standard, and you want to make sure that you disable any plugins or start a new campaign and see if the problem persists without any extensions. Sometimes even if you disable extensions, depending on how they're written and what they do, they can cause baggage or like some leftover stuff that doesn't go away. So there could be a case where you have, it doesn't happen often, but depending on what it does and what type of extensions you're running, but essentially whatever it is that they have installed and whatever they alter the records, the overrides could still reside in your campaign. So even if you disable them, sometimes the data sticks around. So hopefully that's not you, but that's a risk of using extensions. So you want to make sure that they're updated and all that good stuff before you freak out. Maybe wait about a week or so, get everyone a chance to get used to the changes that are in Fantasy Grounds right now. So I'm going to go back over to Fantasy Grounds. So basically, this update has changed quite a bit of things here. There are different aspects that I kind of wanted to touch on for you guys before I have any other issues. So essentially, the main things are the party sheet or the party tracker thing. This thing up here, the initiative tracker, is something that it was added and changed recently. So if you unlock this, you would expand this out, and this shows the combat initiative order in more of an expanded format. And if you actually switch to this list here, this is your traditional one. So if you don't like this initiative tracker, you can always use that. So that's kind of a big change. You can also unlock this and kind of move it around if you need to, but I think I like it right where it is. And like I was saying earlier, before I got so rudely interrupted, I was pointing out the fact that the lock button has changed or has moved. So over here on the top left corner is where the lock and unlock button is now. So that's might take a while to get used to. One good thing about it is, well, a lot of people are pissed because they don't like change, or they didn't think it needed to be moved. But I noticed that when it was over here on the right-hand side, I'd always click on that the question mark, and that would always bothered me. So that's something that I'm glad has kind of been changed. So the other thing is I made a map that had this character Namita on here, and I made an encounter with a quick map. So this would be good if you were going to run a adventure and you just needed a really quick way to put the information out without setting up a big huge to-do on Fantasy Grounds with line of sight and all that stuff. So what I had set up here is I'm going to bring open my images again, and then I have a module loaded here. This is called Ship Starter. I think this is on the Fantasy Grounds store, but essentially it's just a bunch of collection of maps that you can use for Fantasy Grounds. They don't have line of sight on them because they're very old, meaning that they were, put on the store probably about 4 years ago. But I still like the maps themselves. It's still pretty neat. And if you use the maps, you can always add your own line of sight if you're familiar with that sort of thing. But essentially, this is the map that I was using earlier before I had the internet problem. But this is essentially like you got some lava here and smoke, and then I actually had water turned on out here. I think I got it turned off now because of the I want to make sure I don't have any more problems, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the decorations on the map for now. And basically what I was doing here is there is an encounter out here that essentially has these reef sharks. and I was going to have her on the actual map. So I'm going to take these two and put them on this map here. So they got to go and basically retrieve this treasure chest that's out here, and it looks like that's not the case anymore. It's not out there anymore. Let me double check. Let's see. Yeah. So, anyways, there's a treasure chest floating down here, and she has to go retrieve it. So, what I was going to do is with this encounter here, since I don't have anything really, set in stone here, is I can add a quick map to it, which is essentially a tile of whatever you need. So, if I open up the quick map, I can add a tile asset to here. I can either click on this plus button, or I can open up the assets and drag it in here, however you want to do it. But in this case, I'll just click the green plus button. And what I'm going to do is make sure I'm in images, because that's where all your image records are. Because it does default on all when you first start doing this, so you want to be careful with that. But essentially, this eagle was the last thing I looked at, so it saved that. But I'm going to go with ocean and take a look at the tiles that I have. So these are different tiles that I might be able to use. So there's a really basic battle map tile here. This is like a surface without a grid on it. So I'm just going to click on that and click on quick map, and that'll assign it to this encounter. So then the next thing is taking this and using it as a fill, which will fill up the space depending on what you're going to do with it. So I'll hit fill, and then I'm just going to go with small, because I don't want this big huge map. I don't need that. And then as far as the encounter goes, there's 2 reef sharks. So I'm going to place them on this quick map in 2 different locations. So there's going to be one here and one here. And what I'm going to do is move the NPCs over here to this corner. So this is basically how you kind of lay out your map. And these are zones. So, top left corner, top right corner, bottom right corner, that sort of thing. So you have this area. If you guys want a little bit more of an official video, I mean, Doug just did this just the other day. So I'm just kind of exploring this, kind of learning as I go. So, excuse me if I make some mistakes or, I don't do it right. But essentially, I'm just kind of checking it out. So that's how you do that. And once you hit submit here, you can basically, it'll put the NPCs and the players on the map. So if you zoom into this map, I'm going to actually expand on it. So I'm going to minimize this for right now and move this over here. And then bring this map up and increase the size. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So you don't have to worry too much, but there's really no line of sight. It's just essentially just a really quick and dirty way to do stuff. If you need a grid, you can always turn on the grid and make it visible if you need to. I'd like to change the color because I'm kind of picky about that. So I'll just kind of do this like light blue color, turn down the opacity a little bit, just in case if you need a grid. You may not, and then you have to be in play mode to interact with the tokens. So these are the 2 tokens for the sharks, and they're not visible right now. That's why they're grayed out. So if I change it to the visibility here to on, now they're visible to the players. So what's kind of cool is if you change the mode to the 3D view, you can kind of change the depth of these particular sharks. So you can say that these 2 swam out from that island, and they're trying to get to that chest, and you just run this quick map to kind of simulate them being out in the ocean. That way you don't have to have a huge map. You can have several smaller quick maps linked to a larger map. So I'm going to switch. There's a view type. You can switch it from here. You can go to free camera, or you can go to token mode. Or in this case, you have a shortcut up here, which will toggle the camera view. So now you have this view, which is basically this is what this 2D view thing is like. So what I thought was kind of cool is with these reef sharks, since they are underwater, you can hold the Alt key and kind of submerge them. So you can put them, down 10 feet or whatever under the water. And then we have this eagle, which is going to try to keep an eye on them and rescue them. So this guy here, he's their kind of like their pet or their ally. He's up here about 30 feet or 15, maybe 30. There we go. 15, 30. There we go. So you can have kind of an idea of space. We didn't have that before. So you have this Z axis. So we had X and Y, and now you have this Z, so you can actually see what's happening here. So when you move these tokens, it's going to look more like they're underwater, and that's kind of cool. And then you can change the the view of how they're going to look in this. So this is pretty cool. I like how this turned out. But this is your different tokens now, and you'll notice that when you are doing this, the tokens are going to be different. So it depends on what content you have, but you're going to have a full version of a token, and then you're going to have this type of token for the other view. So that's why it didn't switch, because it doesn't have a token assigned to it, which is something you can do for your character. So if you have a full body length, and then you can make the head part for the token. So for custom characters, it's going to be kind of essential to have a view like this. So this thing here is the newer full body view. If you use the SRD and the monster manual, I think some of the other books were done as well. So it's going to take a while for them to go back and update all the older content, but there's some pretty good starter stuff out there. And these are stored actually in the assets area. So if you want an asset like this for your character sheet, let me bring that up. If you look carefully, let me see if I can zoom in on this. Yeah, so if you look carefully here, you have your portrait, you have a token, and then you have this full body view. So these are the three different things. So they could essentially be a different animal altogether, but this is where you can set this. So this token does come from your token assets, or you can use this camera view and have this as well. And what you're going to do is you can actually click and it'll show the linked map. If you're on a map and you need to figure, like if you accidentally closed it, you can actually click on this. It'll bring up the map that token is on, which is kind of helpful for players. The other thing is that if you're going to look for these, they are stored in assets under images. And I believe they are in Fantasy Grounds Hero or something like that. Heroic is what I think Doug said the other day. There's a heroic folder where these reside. So Fantasy Grounds Heroic females, and there's heroic males. So you can have these as your token. So you have this guy here, and then you have the matching token. So if you wanted to switch your tokens out for this particular player, you could do that. So that's where those reside. So when you're making content now, you want to make two tokens now. Essentially, you're going to make a round image, and then something that'll fit on the map for moving on the flat, the 2D version, and then you need the 3D tall version so that you can move this around if you want it to look like this. Or you can just use this traditional token. It's either way. But this is more like a standee here now, and this looks pretty good. It's not bad. So this may not appeal to some of you. Like, I get it. Like some people's like, yeah, that's useless to me. I don't need it. But there are times where this might come in handy. And I think tactically having this to illustrate height and depth is really useful to me. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is kind of more useful to me in this case because I used to use the party sheet to do this. And now I don't have to do that. So over here on the initiative tracker, as you go down the initiative, this thing rotates as you go through. So it's kind of cool. But there's a galley. I don't know, that's not on here anymore, but if I drag this over, let's see if I can get that on here. Yeah, so this is my galley. It doesn't look very good in here because it's not scaled properly. But essentially, this was a ship that I was putting on the map. And then what I was doing is lowering the depth, so it kind of looks like it's in the water, and then kind of putting it in the background. And that way, you kind of have that immersion. This isn't the right kind of graphic for this, obviously, because it's, it's not scaled properly. But you could do something like that, and that's actually a ship that's on the combat tracker. And then you have this eagle who's supposed to come in and swoop in and rescue these guys. So anyway, so this is just a kind of an idea of some of the things you could do with these new features. You obviously will probably think of even more creative things as time goes on, but this opens up a lot of room for people who do artwork. So if you're someone who does tokens, when you start doing a full body and a token pog and charge a little more for it, maybe. Or sell them as a set, something like that. But I think there's going to be a lot more avenues to make revenue from artwork that will cater to this type of thing here. And this is going to take a while to get used to. I'll tell you that just having this lock moved is freaking people out. They're pissed. They don't know what's going on. So it'll get better. I think this is just an initial shock here of change, and I think that's all it is. Just some growing pains, and it's gonna take time. And it's one of those things where a lot of people don't want them to change because you got a game coming up, and you're all pissed off because you got to figure out how to use it, and that's part of the risk of the changes. And also, if you're using extensions and they're broken right now, that can be annoying, but it'll get fixed eventually. And I would just give it a couple weeks and you're going to be fine. I don't think you're going to die. So this is just a kind of a quick way to show you kind of some of the use cases here for this. And then of course you can switch back to your traditional mode. And so this is what you have here. So anyway, so that's just some of the stuff you can do with a new update. So the other thing I wanted to mention was that the stories have changed quite a bit. So you have books. So these are your actual reference manuals now. They're not called reference manuals. They're called books. And then within those, in your campaign data, you have stories. So essentially, what happened is they took the story entries and they kind of broke them in and made a hybrid of a story entry and a reference manual. So just for example, this let's go with this Vodari thing here. So this is the reference manual, the traditional one that we're used to looking at. And you'll notice that you won't see the export button down here. That's been moved. So if you're working on modules, that they've changed that too. So you can still use the export command, and then in the book view, you can click on campaign and start building your own reference manual. And I believe that button was moved. I don't know where they moved it to, but it isn't where you would think it is anymore. But anyway, so this is just this is the reference manual. But then when you go to the story view, I'm going to actually filter it to, let's go to the Vodari here. What is this? So we want the players thing of the Vodari. Geez, there's a lot of chapters in here. So, okay, Sea of Vodari. Wow, they broke it up in a lot of chapters, so I can see why this would be. Okay, so anyways, when you click on these, now they go to a reference manual page instead of your traditional story page. So this is the one where you can actually break this up and you can turn this into, a kind of like a reference manual piece. So this is kind of taking the reference manual out and putting it into story format. So this is a kind of your traditional view of how these looked. And this one was made a while ago, so this is an older module, so it isn't quite built the same way as a newer module. So I want to take a look at something newer, because that still kind of has that traditional build to it. So if you go to let's go to something newer. So a lot of these are old. These all came out like way even before Unity came out. So I want to bring up something new. So let's do the player's handbook. Something that's a lot newer. Something that's been reworked. Okay, so here's the player's handbook. And when we come over to having it loaded here, you still have this reference manual view. But when we come over to the story view, let's see, you have book, and that's going to take you to the reference manual. So when you load, like in this case, that was the player's handbook, instead of having to go all the way into the interface, you just click on book, and then you click on this, and that brings up the reference manual, which is a little cleaner than it was before. It's still probably about the same amount of clicks, but once you get used to it, it's a lot better than trying to go to modules and then coming to here and then clicking on the reference manual. So now the reference manuals reside in the bookshelf, which is this button here under your library. So you click on book, and that shows all the reference manuals for all the books that you have loaded. And then the story breakout thing here is essentially the pieces of the books in the older story format, kind of. And let's go with the, I want to see if I can figure out this player's handbook. So there's the SRD. Okay, here we go, player's handbook. So this here, you see this little icon, it's story advanced, and the other one had the older icon, which means that it was built kind of before this. So when you click on these now have that fancy formatting that you are used to seeing in the newer reference manuals. So that's kind of the difference in here. When you unlock stuff like this is where you get all that fancy stuff. So you can build your story entries and then build your reference manual while you're doing it. So you can do it piece by piece. You don't need things like author extension anymore. You just build with this, and it's a lot cleaner. If you have an older module that used the author extension, that might give you some issues, or you might be kind of locked in to the older view, which is the ones I was showing you here before. So if you go to like this Adventures on the High Seas, this one's actually updated more. Yeah, this one has a reference view, but some of these older ones do not. So if you've got a really old adventure that's not like it's third party, see how it has this TT thing? This is the simple page. This is kind of formatted like the old way. So there are two different views, and until people can go back and update these, which I don't think they're going to do all of them, I think all the official content will eventually get worked through. But going back and recreating all those different reference manuals is going to be just a monumental task. They did a pretty good job with getting the art and stuff, but going back and doing new reference manuals for everything is going to be crazy. So my hat's off to you if you're someone in the middle of a project and all this is going on. I apologize to you for my personal experience. So honestly, if you haven't updated yet and you're in the middle of a project, I would finish the project first or start over, because you're going to basically run into a situation where it's either going to work or not. And if it's a newer module, you should probably be all right. But if you're going back to update an older one, it's going to be a lot of extra monkeying around and fixing and change. You basically have to redo a lot of it, and that's going to be a ton of work. But that it is what it is. It's part of growth and expansion. But I just think that I like the idea now that you have the ability to build your chapters in story mode kind of like you used to traditionally, but you get access to the reference manual style, which is the advanced mode, and that really makes this shine. So they've kind of changed the way the books and reference manuals work. It's kind of like a hybrid now, where a book is your library, and these are all your reference manuals from everything you have loaded, whereas your stories are all the pieces that are in here. And it's kind of like it was before, except for you have the nice advanced mode instead of being stuck with the old way. So the older modules will have this TR, kind of this simple mode, and then the newer modules that have been updated to the standard will have that. So like this is Ghost of Saltmarsh. That one hasn't been reworked yet. So I don't know if they're going to. I don't know what the plan is, but I'm saying that not everything is equal. Like you're going to find some differences. So yeah, this is still all in the older format. So when you click on these story entries, it's not the advanced mode, which gives you the ability to do 2 columns and insert images instead of just linking them, that sort of thing. So that's going to take a while. I don't know what the schedule is for that, but I'm sure that's a good couple years of work right there. So yeah, most of these modules that I have loaded are old school, so they're going to have they won't have the new fancy 3D token things, and they won't have the fancy reference manuals. So that's something you'll have to live with for a while unless you want to do it yourself. But that's a lot of work to go back through the back catalog and fix all that stuff. So I don't know how far they're going to go back, but I wouldn't want to be the one doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, if you got something brand new that's happening, then you can build it all in here. You won't need to worry about that anymore. But if you got older stuff or you're in the middle of a project, I don't envy you at all. So that's some of the main changes. So you got this reference manual book view thing. You have this carousel kind of this initiative tracker. It's more of a visual thing for players. You can always turn it off and go back to the traditional mode. You don't have to have it on. And in the settings under options, there is a setting here for limiting the combat list size. So this is down to 6. And the reason they have that in there is in case, because you can do 8, you can do 10. If you go any wider than 12 though, and you got a smaller display like a laptop, it's gonna get covered. So they have it set up to where you can add up to 12, but I think 6 is a good number in most cases. You might want to go to 8 or 10, but I don't think you have to go much more than that. So that's kind of cool. I mean, it might be useful for some people. Some people hate it. You can always turn it off, so it's not that big of a deal. Let's see what else is new that I can think of. So we talked about the maps a little bit. I guess navigation in the maps is going to be problematic until people get used to it. So that's something that's going to take a little time to get used to where everything is, and kind of navigating through those changes, because it's not something that is going to happen overnight. Like I said, the lock moved over here to the left, and then you have this camera view change, so you can go from, let me move this player on the map. So you can go from this mode to kind of this free camera mode, and then you have the kind of this token view mode where you can move around and use the WASD keys. And you have these things where you can go side to side, or you can turn. I think that's incremental. It's kind of slow for that view. I think there's a way that, I think if you hit shift or one of the other keys, you can make that go faster. So this is just just the tip of the iceberg here. We'll see what happens in the future, but I mean, there's a lot of different play style changes that might occur because of these changes. So you might end up playing an entirely different way. Who knows? So some people don't like the change, and you can still kind of use things the old way without having to do that. I do like this quick map thing here. This is a really good idea, because what this does is you can have like a world map, like a hex crawl, and then you can have a bunch of these encounters set up with your quick map all ready to go. And when you go to a hex, you already have that kind of set up with the encounter that's involved. And not all encounters have to be combat. They can be NPCs or whatever. And when you're in that 3D mode, you can just click on that, send it up, and use that, and not necessarily have to have 100 different maps already made up for a hex crawl or for exploration. I think that's where this is going to be pretty sharp. The other thing is, like you can still place your bad guys, and you can place your enemies ahead of time. Obviously, this is a center, and this will break it up into quadrants. It just depends on the size of the asset and what you set it at. So this is just a way that you can actually link a bunch of these quick links with the asset already assigned onto a large regional map. So when you get to that area, you just pop that up and there you go. Won't take as long as going into something that needs a lot of intricate line of sight and such. So like when you have an open space like I had earlier with the ocean, I think that works great. Or you're out in the middle of the desert with sand, or maybe you're flying up in the air. I think that's where this thing kind of works well. But if you're looking for the intricate dungeon, that kind of thing, I think the older way works better for that. But this is just my opinion. You take it how you want. But this is just some of the changes that have come out. Now, there are some things under the hood that really doesn't get seen, but this newer toolbar up here is pretty new. That's here to stay. So that's probably the biggest thing that's going to take a while to get used to. So you can share and unshare the record right from the toolbar. You can lock it. You can link it. You can minimize it, and you can close it. All that's right here on the top. So as before, you used to have to go in, right-click on the image to share it. You don't have to do that anymore, or the object. So that's pretty neat. I like that. So that same thing, you got this lock button up here. There's a button that tells you if it's identified or not. This will tell you what module it's in. And then this will allow you to revert changes to the record. So you know how sometimes when Fantasy Grounds updates, the maps kind of get screwed up and you can't see them anymore? Well, there's how you revert it. Instead of having to go all the way into this image area and right-click on it and then revert there, you're going to do it from right on the image record itself. So these are kind of unrealized creature features that will help most of us. It will piss some people off because you're so used to buttons being in the same place that it's going to take a while to get used to that. But that's part of the game here. So that's pretty much what I can tell that's really big. And of course the dice. If you haven't seen those things yet, basically you got 4 different sets, and you have the shamrock thing. So if you're going to run a adventure coming up this week with St. Patrick's Day, there you go. You got the shamrocks, and then there's some hearts. So you have that. Different flavors of how the effects roll off or on. I like this toxic one. I think that's one of my favorite ones. So if you're doing like Fallout or something like that, or Cyberpunk, that might be cool. Then there's the stars. So there's a starburst one. So, and then you have skulls and hearts, and then you have clovers and stars. So that's pretty cool. So those are new on the store. I think they're like $5 each. And what else that's pretty much it. I mean, just getting used to how the maps work, like how to navigate, I think is going to be the biggest hurdle for a lot of people who are traditional to using Fantasy Grounds. I think that's where a lot of people are going to, God damn it. They're going to say, why the hell did they change this? But in the long run, I think it'll be useful. I just think that this is kind of a cool thing for, like I said, if you wanted to do like a puppet show. And I think this is, some people just use maps very, very judiciously. They don't need all the detail. And then some people want that immersion, that kind of that, that ability to see what's going on at it from a different viewpoint. So let me recenter this. Yeah, it's going to take a bit. Like this is probably not done yet. They have a little bit more work to do, obviously, some more polish, but I think all in all, it's a good step in the right direction. I don't think it's horrible. I think they did the best they could, and this is just a preliminary thing. I don't think they're done yet. I think they've got a few more tricks up their sleeves, but some people who weren't around for the Kickstarter wondered why they changed this, and I think this was part of the Kickstarter goal, was to get to this point. They hired Carl to do the 3D graphics thing, and now they're finally getting to it. And two years later, but it's here now, and they're trying to make it work and trying to give us options to play differently and not just have the same old one dimension, one trick pony thing. And I don't know. I think that this is a good approach for kind of having fun. A lot of people were expecting like an isometric view, which would be cool too, but I think this gives you a different experience. And, if you want that, there's other game systems out there that'll do it. But yeah, so having this quick map thing is cool, because if you leave your regular map and you go out into the wilderness and you can use the quick map, this is really cool. I think that's going to change the way I plan encounters, and it's kind of useful if you don't need all the fancy line of sight and such. I think that's a really cool way to do it. Yeah, that's pretty neat. So I like that. I can deal with that. And what else do we got up here? So we got clear targets, target friendly, target enemy, target mode, selection mode, eraser, clear drawing mode. So these are pretty much, ping mode. That's what I wanted to do. So when you're in ping mode, now you can just double click. So you click on the little ping here or up here in the toolbar, and let's say you want to point at something, you just say, hey, it's over here. If you want to change your color and you're a player or a GM, you go into the options and you have your color, your active character color. So if you want to go to like a blue color, then they'll know it's you. And now you can just double click on the map and it will give you that ping location. So that's kind of cool. I guess that's a really good, a lot of people wanted that. That's good that they did that. This thing here, this 3D thing, I don't know if everyone necessarily wanted that, but we got it now. So if you want to change the way you play a little, this might be a thing. Yeah, I don't know if I like that or not. It's going to take a little getting used to. And you got to make sure you're on the play mode to do this, to move this stuff around. But yeah, it's not too bad. Let's see what this looks like a little bit here on this level. So yeah, I think the next evolution will be to put assets on here that are vertical. That way you can put a couple trees and stuff. I'm pretty sure you can do that now as a token. I mean, you could probably add something here, the vertical image like a tree type thing, but I think they're going to have to do some planning on that. As I said, if you add too much stuff on here, you get a performance hit eventually. So anyways, that's pretty cool. I like the way they did it, and I'm sorry about earlier. I had some internet issues, but I think this will be okay. It's not too bad. Like I said, getting used to where that button is probably going to kick your butt. And then getting used to this navigator, having an actual navigator is really cool. And then you can use the arrow keys too. I mean, you could do that before, but this is really way better, I think, than what we had before. Because before it was that weird gold thing that you couldn't hardly control it. And you could still do the middle mouse button and kind of hold it down. And if you have a middle mouse button, you can use this to kind of change the view. You can mouse wheel in. There's X and C there's shortcuts for dragging. And then they did something that was kind of cool. So I think if you have something stacked up here, I haven't tested this yet, so we'll see. We'll do it live here. Probably blow up in my face, but so let's just say you have this view like this, and I think, I'm not positive, but if you right click on here, let's go to this guy. So if I right click on here and go to send, let's see, send back, send front. I think this will if you have a stack, I think what it will do is it'll allow you to change the tokens. I think that's what it's for. I could be wrong, but essentially, like this sends the token stack. Let me see if this send it back. I think that's what this is for. Yeah, I don't remember, but nonetheless, there is that too. So this is interesting. So you have delete token, you have visibility, rotate left, rotate right, and then you have send back and then bring to front. So I don't remember what that was for, but that there is a change. I think that comes into play when you're in maybe in a top-down type situation. I can try that. So let me go back to the regular view. So I'm going to toggle this back to here. Maybe it works for this. So here's that. If I right click and go to send back, yeah, so that's resolving token stack. So that's a nice thing. So if you've had stacked tokens before, it was a pain in the butt where you had to, move one out of the way, then get this one and move it. So now if you accidentally stack your tokens or they have to be in the same place, you can right click and send one of these forward or backwards. So I'm going to send this guy backwards, and then that will bring this one to the front. So that resolves the token stacking in this view. So that's what that's for. So that's cool. I like that. That's a nice little touch. I know that is very annoying. I know that Diablo Bob's player tools had token stacking where you had to hit shift and click. So I don't know if that's going to be a thing anymore or not. But like I said, wait for your extensions to get updated, folks, because that's going to be your next hurdle. Other than getting used to how the controls work, I mean, this view works pretty much the same, but getting used to how this works and how this token view works is going to take some time, because it may or may not appeal to you depending on what you're doing. And then you got these arrow keys. You can move this stuff. Yeah, it's pretty slow in this mode. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do it, but it'll get better. I'm sure they'll figure out something. But anyways, folks, you have a good rest of your week. Tomorrow's Friday, and hopefully this helped a little bit. Sorry about all the confusion earlier, but I just kind of wanted to kind of walk through a little bit of this on my own terms. I watched Doug's videos, and until you actually get your hands on it and start playing with it, it's really hard to really explain it. You just have to use it, and that's what I encourage you to do, is play around with it. Make a new campaign and use that first and see how it goes. And if it sucks, or you got performance issues or whatever, report it on the official Fantasy Grounds forums and the House of Healing, so they can look at it and make some changes based on our input. Otherwise, it won't get fixed. You just got people running around yelling, is this? Oh, no, I'm not David Middleton. No way. Oh, this is Laren. Nope, David is no longer with us. He actually passed away, I want to say about a year or two ago. So he's I miss him a lot. He's a influence for sure. David is one of the people who got me into Fantasy Grounds. I watched his earlier videos, and I miss him a lot. He's a good guy. So anyways, folks, you take care. Have a good one, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.